Good morning. Here's the plan. We're going to try to do two things today. For about 45 minutes, we're going to wrap up the discussion of employment, unemployment, labor force, whatnot, okay? A proper class. And then, without a break, for about another 45 minutes, we're going to talk in Turkish. We're going to turn on the computer and look at the Statistics Institute's webpage and talk about the Turkish numbers, okay? We're going to look at the inflation numbers, talk about what it means. We're going to look at the employment numbers, talk about what it means. So we're going to talk about the Turkish economy a little bit, all right? So the plan, if I can pull it off, is to finish at around 12:15. Then we could all go to lunch, and at 12:30, 12:40, something like that, Uğur Gürses is talking. Right? You must have seen the advertisements for that. Uğur Gürses is one of the better economics writers in the Turkish journalism, so he's well worth listening to. And I'd like to let you go in ample time so that you could have a quick lunch and then go to the talk. All right? So, employment. What do we say? We begin with the population. What is our population? Don't mumble. What is the population? Bit more finesse. So, has anyone looked it up? Did you look this up? If you look at it, this is, good for you. So there's a statement on 2X webpage that says, as of December 31st, 2009, the Turkish population is 72.5 million, okay? So in this country, we're 72.5 million people, right? So of that, we go to the working age population, right? And that we define as older than 15, all right? Could you be younger than 15 and be employed in our country? Wait, okay. Okay, let me ask the question better. Thank you, that's very right. Of course, you could be employed at any age, but at many ages, that's a crime. Could you be younger than 15 and be legally employed in our country? Are you sure? Hmm? So take a look at this, all right? That's the working age population. And then we said, non-institutional, okay? This is sometimes called non-institutional, sometimes called non-institutional civilian, often to mean the same thing, right? People who get to work if they want to, all right? Now, our question was the following. The unemployment rate. What is this? Okay, and I gave you the 13 number on Monday, but that wasn't the exact number. Has anyone looked up the unemployment number? Unemployment rate. So that depends on when you're looking, okay? Again, it depends on when you're looking. It has been moving around a lot, so it was 16.4 and then it came down to that, right? So let's say this is 13.6, okay? This is a rate, so this is a ratio of something to something. What to what? Right, so this is 13.6% of the people are unemployed. Which people? Yes, sir. Okay, so let's agree on this. The unemployment rate is not a ratio of something, it is not a ratio of something to the population, okay? The population is irrelevant because we don't really care whether someone that is, say, 3 years old is employed or unemployed, or there are too many unemployed people compared to 3-year-olds, right? We don't care about these guys in the numerator or in the denominator, okay? So we have to have our reference group right. This is the non-institutional, okay? Let's say someone does not want to work. Let's say it's me, right? I win the lottery. I say, who cares about 102, okay? So I'm no longer working. Now, should I be counted as unemployed? Okay, we agreed on this. I'm not unemployed. Should my presence drive down the unemployment rate? wait. Obviously, since I'm not unemployed, I'm not in the numerator, right? But should I be in the denominator? If there are many people like me, should we think that the unemployment rate is lower? Right? You get the feeling, right? It has to be that we're looking at the ratio of people who are not working, and the ratio is as a fraction of the people who are working or who want to work, right? We're looking for a job. That's why it's the labor force, okay? So of the non-institutional, you are asked, are you working? If you say yes, okay, you're in the labor force. If you say no, but then when asked, did you look for a job? And you say yes, you're still in the labor force, right? So we have these guys, we have a labor force. The labor force is divided into the employed and the unemployed, okay? At this time, you're well aware that the unemployed are not the not employed, right? There are many categories of people. You could be employed, you could be unemployed, or you could be neither. If you're neither, what are you? Okay, so you're either outside the labor force, or you are not in the working age population, or you are institutional. Okay? Good. Let's write this up this way so that I can use the board. Okay? Outside the... I don't have an exemplary usage of the board, but I don't usually write this bad. Outside the labor force. Now, the outside the labor force guys, again, come in varieties. Okay? Did anyone look for these numbers? So the Statistics Institute reports the following. We're going to look at these. How many people are there in the non-institutional working age population? Okay? How many of them are in the labor force? How many of them are employed? How many are unemployed? Okay? Then in a separate table, it reports of the people who are outside the labor force, why are they outside the labor force? Okay? So when they ask you, did you work? And you say no, they don't let go. They ask you, did you look for a job? If you just say no, again, they don't let go. They ask you, would you take it if I gave you a job? Okay? If we offered you a job, would you take it? This is the good way of putting it. Willing to work. Okay? This is the question. Are you willing to work? Okay? Some people are. These guys come in two fashions. So they ask you, did you work? No. Did you look for a job? No. Would you accept it if I offered you a job today? Okay? Yes. Ah, so you're willing to work, right? Then they ask you, why did you not look for a job? Okay? Part of these guys, part of these guys say, I looked for a job for a long time, but couldn't find one. It seems I cannot find a job, so it's not worth looking for it. Okay? These guys have given up the hope of being employed. They are called discouraged. Discouraged workers. Okay? This is a major problem, and these guys are an important source of tension between the people who collect the employment statistics and people who use the employment statistics. For the following reason. Now, think of these discouraged workers. Are they closer to the people who have won the lottery and not working and they don't need to work? Or are they close to the unemployed people, the guys who want to work but aren't able to find a job? Okay, so you could think of an unemployment definition that also encompasses the discouraged workers. All right? But you have to understand, a definition is a definition. Unemployment has a very precise definition. Not working, looking for a job. Okay? These guys are not unemployed. But because people have difficulty understanding what a definition means, constantly the Statistics Agency gets criticized for underreporting unemployment because they don't count these guys in. They are not supposed to. Okay? But you could define a broader, generalized unemployment definition that puts these people in as well. Okay? Now, when do we see more discouraged workers? When the economy is doing well or when the economy is doing badly? Discouraged workers become discouraged because they look for a job for a long time, they can't find a job. Okay? When are you more likely to not be able to find a job for a long time? In a good time or in a bad time? Very good. Now, let's think of this. I was unemployed. I look for a job, I can't find one, I can't find one. Am I still unemployed? Yes, I can't find a job. At some point I say, damn it, no jobs for me. I'd rather sleep in, okay? Not looking for a job. Am I still unemployed? No. What happened to the unemployment rate? The unemployment rate decreases, okay? The unemployment rate is decreasing because unemployed people are dropping out of the labor force. We're no longer observing them. This is something that routinely happens in long recessions. You begin to see the unemployment rate declining, not because people are finding a job, but because they're just giving up the hope of finding a job and moving from being unemployed to being discouraged, okay? We're going to talk about this a bit more. So some of these people who are not working, not looking for a job, but are willing to work, say, I'm not looking for a job because I'm discouraged. This is the minority. The majority is other, and I have no idea what this other is. Okay? A lot of people here, though. The other group is not willing to work. So, not working, not looking for a job, and would not take a job if offered. Okay? Why not? Student. Okay? A lot. This is you guys. Okay, now, this is one of those great things, right? So, calling these people housewives is not exactly politically correct, and the international literature doesn't call them that, right? It's mostly home production. However, if you look at the Turkish Statistics Agency's tables, in Turkish they call this ev işleriyle meşgul. In English they call it housewife. Okay? It turns out they are right. How do we know this? They are all women in Turkey. Okay? There are no male people who answered this question, why would you not accept a job if I offered you? By saying, oh, because I'm doing housework. Okay? So we have, I'm still going to call this home production. Okay? We have students. We have people working on home production. We have retired people. What else? Very good. We have disabled people. And then one more. Wow, you guys have done your homework. I'm impressed. Yeah. Okay, so usually this is tiny, okay? And this is something you would find in Turkey, but not usually elsewhere, right? So if you are, say, a cotton picker, if you are a hazelnut picker, okay? And that's all you do. So when it's time to pick the cotton, you go to Çukurova, pick the cotton, and you earn your year's income, right? That means in January you're unemployed, okay? But not quite, because you know that your job doesn't exist. You're not even looking for a job, all right? So let's put this here. Seasonal workers, okay? This isn't very good though, right? So should we be pleased that these guys are just seasonal workers? In some sense, this means they're unemployed today, but they will be employed at some point this year, right? When their season comes. But it also means this chunk of our labor force only works, say, 2 months a year. Would they rather be working 12 months a year? Or, let's put it this way, as economists, okay, from the outside, would we rather have these guys work more? Is it good that a part of your population is just working 2 months a year? It's a trick question, okay? Because if all you want is more output, obviously you want everyone to work. But you have to ask, are these guys happy with what they have? If the answer is yes, it's none of our business, okay? But we know that the answer is no, right? They'd rather not be seasonal workers. Okay, there's one more. Yep, there's always another. Who goes in the other? So there are people who are not employed, not looking for a job, wouldn't accept a job if offered, who are not a student, not disabled, not doing home production, not retired, not seasonal workers. Who are these people? Hmm? Oh, we already began with non-institutional civilian, right? So not military. No, not military, right? Non-institutional. Military is already taken out here. Hmm? Who is talking? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we call these rich people, okay? In fact, we call these filthy rich people. They're so rich that they don't even bother working, right? That's not a good thing. You should work, okay? So, but that's exactly what it is. I'm not working because I don't need to work. I don't want to work. It's not because I have, anything else that I have to do. It's not because I cannot work. It's just that I don't, okay? All right? Now, the unemployment rate is the ratio of the number of unemployed, okay? And now we have a very good understanding of who these people are, divided by the labor force, okay? Here's a question. Say you were a student, you graduate, okay? For a little while you'll be unemployed. You won't begin to work like the day you graduate. That's how it works in Turkey in general, right? Because you begin to look for a job after you graduate, which isn't very clever, but that's what you do. So for a while, you're going to be here and in here, right? Well then, so when both the numerator and the denominator goes up by 1, does the ratio increase or decrease or not change? Basic math question that very few people understand. It cannot decrease. Look. It says 13.6% of the people, right? 13.6% of the labor force are unemployed. Let's say the ratio was 0, okay? In fact, let's say that both of these are 0. There are no unemployed people and no one in the labor force, okay? What is the unemployment rate? It's not very well defined, 0 over 0, but let's call that 0, okay? Now, let's say one of you graduates, the first one to graduate, and becomes unemployed for a month. What's the labor force? 1. What's the unemployed number of unemployed? What happened to the unemployment rate? To 100%. Okay? If this ratio is less than 1, and if you add 1 to both, the ratio increases. And this is the kind of thing that you're supposed to be tested on in the university entrance exam. Okay? But this is important. Because it also says it's the same, it's exactly the opposite of the reasoning. Well, it's the same reasoning in the opposite sign that says if unemployed people drop out of unemployment and the labor force, the ratio declines. Okay? Why is that? Because if all unemployed people leave the labor force, this is 0. Is the labor force 0? No, people are working. Unemployment rate is 0 though. Okay? So, we have to be very careful in thinking about what the number of unemployed measures, what the unemployment rate measures, what the employment rate measures, okay? What the labor force participation rate measures. The labor force participation rate is the ratio of this to this, okay? How many people who are in the working age population who are not, so when you say institutionalized, in English this usually means crazy. But understand right thing here, who are non-institutional, who are not in the military, not in jail, whatever. Okay, so how many of the people who could potentially be working either work or want to work? This is a very important number for our country, okay? Because it's embarrassingly low. Why is it so low? We'll talk about this in about half an hour, okay? Now, another thing that we want to talk about unemployment is, are all unemployed the same? Okay? So we could think of unemployed people in several classes. I could be unemployed because, so let's work over my example. Let's say I get mad at the university and resign. Okay? I am unemployed. I'm a decent macroeconomist. I teach a decent-ish 102 class. Some university in Turkey surely needs someone like me. Should I be confident that I will find a job, in about 3 months' time? Yeah, okay. But will I find a job tomorrow? In fact, which universities in Turkey need people to teach 102 lectures? You don't know. I don't know either, right? It's going to take a little while for me to find that out, right? During that period, I will be unemployed. Is my unemployment a terrible kind of unemployment? That's not, okay. I mean, unemployment is never a good thing, but if you have to be unemployed, this is a good kind of unemployment, okay? Let's think of something else. Let's say socialism comes, okay? Now we have a socialist economy. What am I teaching you? Make no mistake, I'm teaching you capitalism, okay? You may like it or not like it, but you should learn it, okay? Now, is my human capital, is my knowledge of any use now? No. Will I be unemployed? Yeah. Okay? Now, will I find a job quickly? In fact, if I insist on finding a job as a 102 instructor who teaches about, the equilibrium mechanisms with the price mechanism in capitalism, right, which no longer exists, I will probably die unemployed, okay? Is this a bad kind of unemployment? This is a terrible kind of unemployment, okay? Here's another one. The economy takes a terrible, terrible, terrible hit, right? So a lot of people suddenly say, wait, perhaps it's better for me not to go to the university this year, okay? Because if I try to work a little bit, perhaps, or at least not pay the fees associated with going to university, I'm better off, okay? So no students. Does the university, if the student population declines to a half, if the demand for university services declines to a half, does the university still need me? Wait, teşekkür ederim. I mean, somebody has to teach the other half, right? But it is known that Selin Sayek is the better instructor of these things, right? In fact, the better instructor in general. So they retain her and fire me, all right? Am I unemployed? Yes, I am looking for a job. I know that I will be re-employed when the economy picks up, when you guys come back to the university, because they will need someone to teach this class again, okay? So these are the three kinds of unemployment that we could think of. And we have a name for this, right? The 102 lecture, the 102 class, is essentially this, learning how to name the concepts so that you can properly talk about them. The first kind of unemployment is called frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment is this. There is a person who wants a job, and there's a job for this person. However, neither the job, neither the person, neither the employer who is looking for the worker knows all the workers in the labor market, nor the worker knows all the jobs in the labor market, okay? So it takes a time for these guys to match. I go out and say, I'm looking for a job as a macroeconomics professor, okay? So I go to, say, I don't know, Boğaziçi University and say, do you need a macroeconomist? They say, no. Am I still unemployed? Yes, I was unemployed. I went to Boğaziçi, asked them, do you need a macroeconomist? They said no. Okay. Then say I went to Hacettepe University and they said, well, we need a macroeconomist, but not you. Am I still unemployed? Sure. Then I go to say, we have many universities. I begin to knock on the doors one by one, right? Meanwhile, say ODTÜ next door is looking for someone exactly like me, okay? But it's going to take me 2 months to figure this out because I'm rather slow, okay? For 2 months, I'll be unemployed. The job is there. ODTÜ is looking for someone exactly like me, okay? I'm out here. I'm unemployed looking for the job, but we haven't matched. So we call this not being able to match the friction in the labor market. The labor market is not frictionless. Friction, sürtünme. Okay? The labor market isn't this perfect market where everybody knows everything, right? Whenever you see that, oh, this is the right guy for this job, they immediately hook up. It takes a while. You have to search for a job. You will realize this very forcefully when you graduate, right? You will be very valuable sought after people, become graduates. Surely you will all be employed. In fact, we have the statistics. All of our graduates are employed, okay? So unemployment is not an issue for you. But the day you graduate, you will not have a job, okay? You will interview with a whole bunch of companies or apply to graduate schools or whatever, but for a while, you will be unemployed until you find that job that's good for you. This is one. Let's look a bit more about this. When do you think frictional unemployment would be higher? In good economic times or bad economic times? This is a trick question. Frictional unemployment is high when a lot of people, say, leave their jobs thinking that they would find better jobs, right? Because it has to be that the jobs are out there, right? You know that the job is out there, you just have to look for it. So you leave your existing job, look for another one, okay? When are there more jobs out there? In good times or bad times? In good times. So frictional unemployment tends to increase when the economy picks up, right? When the labor market sucks, you're willing to accept the first job that comes across. Say, okay, there are no jobs. Somebody offered me something, I'm going to pick that, right? Good, you're no longer unemployed. But you hate your job. Say, I always wanted to teach econometrics, and here they make me teach 102, okay? But damn it, it's a crisis year. We have to learn a living, so I do it. But the moment the economy picks up, I resign and say, okay, now I'm going to look for a job as an econometrician, okay? Frictional unemployment picks up when the economy picks up. And we don't worry about this too much. Now let's think of the cross-country case. Think of a country where it's usual that people leave jobs a lot. Okay? Think of another country where you're expected to retire from the first company you enter to work with. Which country would have more frictional unemployment? Let me ask the question again, okay? And perhaps I'll get an answer from the back of the auditorium this time. In one country, people say over their lifetimes, people work with, on average, 5 different companies, 5 different jobs, okay? In another one, when you first accept a job, you're expected to retire from that job, okay? In which country, ma'am, would we have higher frictional unemployment? In the first one, okay? Now, the good example to the second kind of country is Japan, okay? The Japanese system is that when you enter a job, okay, there is this implicit contract, unwritten contract, that says when things go badly, the firm is not going to fire you, but when things go well, you're not supposed to leave, okay? Understand that this frictional unemployment, can this ever be 0? So one of the most important things you learn is unemployment rate is never 0, right? These guys will always be around. Some people will always be leaving their jobs, looking for a better one, right? In the search. But then let's ask the following. On average, do you think Turkey would have a higher unemployment rate or Japan would have a higher unemployment rate? Turkey, right? Because we're going to have more of these frictional guys, right? Japan has this incredibly low average unemployment rate, right? No country in the world sees, say, 1%, 2% unemployment. It usually begins from 5% or so. Japan routinely has 1 or 2%. And when their unemployment rate goes up to 3, that's a national crisis, okay? This is frictional unemployment. The second kind is called structural unemployment. To understand structural unemployment, you have to understand something that we're going to talk about next week, which is labor isn't just a pair of arms and a pair of legs, right? It's also a set of skills. Not all workers are interchangeable, right? If you wanted to make me teach, say, graduate microeconomic theory rather than Semih Koray, I would not teach a good class, okay? Why is that? It's still me, still the same arms, same legs, but I'm a macroeconomist, okay? So I don't call myself a worker. When I'm looking for a job, I don't say I do anything, right? I say I'm a macroeconomist, I do the macroeconomist work. The problem with that is if for some reason macroeconomics is no longer something anyone is interested in, I will be unemployed forever, okay? Now, the word that goes with structural unemployment is obsolete, obsolescence. Think of this as out of date, okay? No longer required. There are some very standard examples of this. Let's say I'm a typewriter repairman. Okay? Do I make a good living in 1970? Sure. Do I make a good living in 2010? In fact, I'm unemployed. Now, the problem is this. As long as I go and say, I'm looking for a job as a typewriter repairman, will I ever be employed? Okay? My job is gone, right? My profession is gone. That's a structural unemployment. This is a very important problem. This means your skills, the worker's skills, are incompatible with the job's required skills. Okay? You will never be employed. This becomes a major problem in two cases. One is when the worker is rather far along in his or her career. Okay? So if I become unemployed, okay, if I become structurally unemployed, I'm 35. I could still be, hopefully able to learn something new, right? Call myself, I don't know, I could learn to cook, okay? I could be a cook and no longer be a macroeconomist and be employed again, okay? What if I was about to retire? I'm 63 and a half years old. 1.5 years more, I'll be out of this, I'm done, properly retired, having done my service to the society, okay? But suddenly, no more need for macroeconomists, you're out there, right? What do I do? That's harder. So structural unemployment hits older workers harder than younger workers, okay? This is also an important problem for Turkey in the cases of, for example, when they privatize mines, okay? You're a coal miner. You spent all your life in the coal mine. Now, this is not just raw labor. There is a profession that goes with this. You know what you're doing, okay? But we know that when the state runs these coal mines, they employ way too many people, okay? When they're privatized, the first thing that happens is a lot of these people are laid off. They're unemployed. Do we need more coal miners? What happens to these guys? Okay? The structural unemployment is a big problem in our country because workers, okay, the broad definition or the broad categorization is skilled versus unskilled, okay? Skilled, that will be you, okay? That's me and that's you. Unskilled is the guy who says, I'll do anything, right? Because that's the definition of unskilled, right? I don't have any particular skills, so all works are the same to me. Now, do we need people like this in this economy? Well, we do need some, okay? Do we need many? Well, we have many of them, right? What is the fraction of the people in Turkey who cannot read and write? Homework for Monday. Find this out, okay? You'll be surprised. I mean, when you think of unskilled, you surely don't have the right thing in mind, okay? When I say our country has a lot of unskilled people, I literally mean the guys who have no skills whatsoever, right? The guys who say, I can't read and write, the guys who say, oh, I've been to primary school for 3 years and dropped out, okay? The average educational attainment, the average years of schooling of the average Turkish worker isn't primary school graduation, okay? That says the vast majority of your labor force is unskilled. Can these guys operate machinery? Machinery, in fact, now comes with a computer keyboard, right? Instructions in English. What are we going to do with these people? This is a major problem. So we have a very large number of structurally unemployed people. This is a terrible problem because these guys will never be employed, okay? You have to retrain them. The third kind is called cyclically unemployed. I haven't yet defined what a business cycle is, so this is not going to ring a bell. But you understand that the economy sometimes does better, sometimes does worse, sometimes does better, sometimes does worse, right? There are these economic cycles, okay? So let's say I'm a skilled worker and I produce, what do I produce? I produce wine, okay? Then in fact, we do produce wine, and in fact, good wine in this country. Now, and remind me of this when we're talking about inflation in a moment. Now, I produce wine. You, sir, do you drink more wine when you're richer, when you have more income, when you're employed, when things are well, or drink more wine when you're unemployed, on the street, blah. Okay? So wine is a tricky question here because some people tend to drink more when they're worse off, but in general, you shouldn't do that. In general, consumption of goods and services, demand for goods and services are high when the economy is doing well, right? In fact, that's almost a definition of the economy doing well, and we're going to talk about the relationship in a couple of weeks. But the point here is this. If things are well, if a lot of people are drinking wine, then there's a lot of wine production, and I'm working, okay? When we're in a business cycle downturn, when we're in a recession, you're not drinking wine. We're not producing wine. Well, I'm not needed to produce wine. I'm unemployed, okay? Now, am I unemployed forever now? Am I structurally unemployed? Now, I'm just waiting for the economy to pick up, things to get better, the economy to be in an expansion, because then, thankfully, you will drink a bit more wine, we'll produce more wine, my company will need me again, I'll be employed again. That's the cyclical unemployment, okay? Now, when you're thinking about economic policy, you have to understand that there's very little you can do about this, right? People will leave jobs, find new jobs, they're going to hook up, not hook up, but economic policy has very little to say about this, okay? You could do something. Does the Turkish state try to facilitate this? İş ve İşçi Bulma Kurumu. That's exactly what this is, right? İş ve İşçi Bulma Kurumu, the agency for finding workers and jobs, right? Those guys say, what we want you to do is come to us, tell us who you are, what your skills are, what you can do, okay? As a worker. As firms, come to us, tell us who you are, what you produce, what kind of workers do you need. And then we're going to match you, right? That's very good. What else? yenibirishbul.com. That's what it is, right? If the work is out there, if the job is out there, if the worker is out there, we're trying to match these guys, okay? Good. What about for structural unemployment? What can you do about that? Training, okay? You give people job training so that they are no longer typewriter repairmen, but computer repairmen, okay? Because you tell the guy, look, as a typewriter repairman, you're structurally unemployed, you'll be unemployed forever. But I could teach you to be a computer repairman, then you will find a job, okay? Turkey oftentimes goes into very large deals with the World Bank for this, right? The World Bank gives large grants to our country so that we give job training to the people who become unemployed as a result of privatization. Oftentimes we bungle it, okay? They become unemployed. What about this one? What can you do about this one? That's essentially it, right? If you're doing good macroeconomic policy, think of two countries. One of them has, so this is time, this is your GDP. One of them has GDP that goes like this. The other one has a GDP that goes like this. Okay, so this is country 1, and this is country 2. Which country will have more swings in unemployment? 1, right? Because if your output is wildly fluctuating, your employment is also wildly fluctuating. Okay? If you do good economic policy, and you don't look like 1, but you look like 2, you're going to have lower unemployment on average. Good. Okay? Excellent.